Good evening, everyone. Mr. Daubert and Mr. Loeffler asked us to come tonight to give a little justification on why we would want to look at having another turf field on site here at the high school. David's here and he's going to give a lot about the scheduling aspect and the use of not only our turf field, but of the surrounding fields on the complex. One thing that I didn't know until last Thursday was when you go over to behind North Middle School where our freshman teams play. I have a vested interest as a freshman principal now, which I had never had before, but I walked over to watch our soccer team and our field hockey team play. And the spacing for those fields is not adequate. And what I mean by not adequate is that the corner, the goal line and the sideline of one of the fields is literally 3 feet down the hill on where the soccer team plays. There's not enough room to have a regulation size soccer field. I had never noticed that before. The same with the field hockey fields. The middle school plays on a higher level, higher tiered field, and their field drapes over the edges of our hills. To me, that's not fair competition for our student athletes. And I think that wasn't necessarily one of the reasons why we got into this conversation, but now that I saw that firsthand, I really question, how can we help our student athletes to have a fair competition field beyond just what Helman gives us. Don't get me wrong, Helman Field is the most beautiful field in Suburban 1. It's got the best views. It has an upside down P, but we're going to get that fixed. But there's so much more to a school our size when it comes to athletics, and we're doing a phenomenal job in the building with our academics as they continue to improve with our student athletes and athletes each year. But I think David's going to explain to you why we need a second field for the scheduling purposes. Now, if you look around our conference, William Tennant High School has one turf field. It's their stadium. They also use that with Archbishop Wood, rents out that field. Central Bucks South has a turf stadium. They're putting in an additional turf field. In the coming, it's been approved. It's going to be in a 1.5 year process. Central Bucks West just put new turf down their stadium. They're going to be rebuilding their snack stands and concession area and locker rooms, but they're also going to be putting a turf field out in the pasture next to the YMCA. Central Bucks East has a new stadium as of last year, but they're building an additional turf field. North Penn does not have a turf football stadium, but they do have a turf all-purpose field, and I think that would be a really good exemplar for what we would like to look at for here. Souderton in our district has a stadium that is turf. Quakertown Alumni Field is turf, and they have an additional field that is under construction or just coming close to a finish. Other Suburban 1 schools, Hatboro Horsham has one. Upper Moreland now they're working on their third. They're opening their stadium this week, and they're going to be doing 2 other additional competition/practice fields. Schools are even starting to build AstroTurf or turf baseball stadiums. I know that would be a Title IX issue, and we would need to look into that. But they're expanding to turf baseball fields. Palisades has a turf stadium. Upper Perkiomen High School, which is not far from here, and not nearly as large, has a turf stadium and a turf practice competition field for other sports. Now, yes, there are still some schools, Pennsbury, Neshaminy, Ben Salem, and Abington, that do not have any turf fields, but many of them work with either soccer complexes or Penn State Abington is used for some athletic events at Abington High School, and that's a turf field. So we're seeing more and more, in my years of experience in Bucks County, from 0 and 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to a majority of them having it. And again, with 2,400 students, plus our middle school football team, North Middle School plays here, all of our track teams for all 3 of the middle schools have their tournaments here, or have their matches here, which then does not allow our teams to go onto that practice facility or game facility until after that's done. So there's a lot of competition on the field and use of time on the field. I'm going to let David explain that a little bit more.
Basically, we have 10 fields out back, and the turf stadium is regulation for football, field hockey, lacrosse, soccer. And besides that, we only have one other field that is regulation. That is the field that's closest to Blooming Glen Road for soccer. The rest of them are what they call usable for sub-varsity, so varsity JV and below can use them. So basically we're down competition fields. In the fall we have 16 teams that compete on 10 fields. We have 7 soccer teams. We have 2 regulation fields, the turf stadium and the one on Blooming Glen. We have 3 fields that are not regulation size that we play middle school games on and freshman games on. For field hockey, we have 5 teams. We have 1 regulation field, that's the stadium, and 2 non-regulation fields. Football has 4 teams here on our campus. We have 1 regulation stadium, and we have 3 practice fields that don't have a full distance, full length, and goalposts. So that's the fall. 16 teams, 10 fields. We make it work. We've made it work. In the past, our district has made a lot of things work. We play softball at the middle school level off campus. At the varsity and JV level, we play off campus. At the varsity baseball level, we play off campus. We bend over backwards to make things work for our athletes. But the fall is very hectic. I'll give you, for instance, today we had a middle school football game on the stadium. Consequently, no one can practice on it. So all of our practice fields and game fields are being used. So our girls soccer team has to practice on a middle school field hockey field because there's no other field available. Well, the coach, it's all laid out in advance, but the coach last night emails me and says, you know what, we have a huge game tomorrow coming up the next day, and I don't want to have a practice on the small field hockey field with portable bowls. You know, it's too important of a game. I said, oh, that's fine, but you're going to have to practice on the turf field from 7:30 to 9. Well, that's late. Our girls are out late a lot. It's not ideal, but we're going to do it. We need to be on a regulation field. It's too big of a game. So that's a little bit of the shuffling that goes on when you only have 10 fields, 2 which are regulation of the 16 teams in the fall. In the winter, we use it again, non-stop. The track teams are out there all winter long, weather permitting. As long as there's no snow out there, they're out there. The lacrosse teams, the other teams that train in the off-season, they come on afterwards. They're out there, it's 33, 34, 40 degrees out, and practicing after track and field is done. Another competition field would help alleviate that. In the spring, it gets really tricky because we only have 1 track here, and all 3 middle schools come here. Most districts have tracks at their other middle schools. We bring everybody here, so consequently we have 2 to 3 track meets a week here in the stadium. Thus, our lacrosse teams can't get on it at the earliest, 4:45 when it's a practice day for track. If there's a meet, 5:30, so they're going 5:30 to 6:30 to 7:30 one team, the next team's coming on 7:30, 8:30 to 9:30, and it's just packed. So that's the spring. Another competition field in the spring would alleviate that. It'd help us to have games. All the practices for lacrosse right now are at night because of all the middle schools coming over because of our own track teams. It also would alleviate or give us another practice area for our baseball teams and softball teams. Right now, as most of you know, March is the beginning of baseball and softball season. The teams are pretty much indoors the entire start of March, usually down to the last day of March. They do go out and they'll throw on the turf field before track practice. They'll get out there as soon as the bell rings, they're throwing, and then they're coming back inside and hitting. Another competition field would not only allow for it to be for the lacrosse in the spring, but also baseball and softball could utilize it to get their season started. This summer, the Torch has been a great renter of the facility. They use it between 3 to 4 nights a week. Consequently, we run some summer leagues with our boys and girls soccer teams. They have to work around that. A lot of times football and the other teams that work out in the summer are going at night. So another competition field in the summer would enable these, they have to go during the day, would enable these guys to go at night. So that's the situation we're at. In the fall is definitely the busiest time of year. Teams rarely get to practice on it. If they do get to practice, it's usually 1, maybe 2 times a week. That's for band, that's for football, that's for hockey, soccer. The time is very limited. And our band makes the most of it. They come in on Saturdays and they'll do a long practice all Saturday, knowing that that's the time they can get it. That's the situation we have. You know, the turf field that we have now is outstanding. When it was put in, it was the best turf. It has lasted a long time. It has served our kids tremendously. It has served our PE classes tremendously. It's been a huge asset to our community, to Deep Run, to other groups that rent it. It's been outstanding. It's safe. It's relatively maintenance-free. As far as competition, now in Pennsylvania, if you're competing in the playoffs, host districts, host on up through states, you're playing soccer, field hockey, lacrosse only on artificial turf fields. You're not playing on grass fields because it's recognized as this is the safest field to play on. This is a field that you can play on after it rains, and you don't have to worry about chewing it up and having to reseed it and having to sit for another year. They're outstanding. And the games have changed. Field hockey has changed. Soccer has changed. Lacrosse has changed. The athletes have changed. They're bigger, faster, they're stronger. And these surfaces are what they're playing on. And it really prepares them as athletes. And they need as much time as they can get on that. Tomorrow, our middle school, or our freshman football team is playing over at Yoder Field. And we're busing them over, paying for a trainer to go over there. You know, that's where we're playing our games. And we do that from time to time with our freshman football field. It's an away game. So it's kind of back to the old days when our varsity football team played over there. They're playing over there because we don't have the space. We try to fit them in, try to work them in. There's only so much time. So tomorrow they have another away game. It was either move them or move somebody else. That's the kind of situation we're dealing with. And there's cost to that, as you know, busing and whatnot. So that's the situation as far